Hi, everyone. My name is Dexter Wimberly. I want to welcome you all to the Harvey B. Gantt Center's Open Air Artist Talk and Conversation with artist Stacy Lynn Waddell. It is a wonderful Tuesday evening in October, and I'm happy that you're all here joining us. This Open Air Artist Talk series has been going on since August. We've had some fantastic artists joining us over the past few months, including Fahamo Peku, Mario Moore, and Alexandria Smith. I'm elated to be here with Stacy Lynn Waddell, and I can't wait to just kind of really just get into our conversation. So I want to just go ahead and give you guys some background on Stacy, at least, like the formal stuff. Using a variety of transformative processes that include heat and laser technology, accumulation, embossing, debossing, interference, and gilding, Stacy Lynn Waddell creates works that structure sites of intersection between both real and imagined aspects of history and culture. I like that. These points of intersection pose important questions related to authorship, beauty, and the persuasive power of nationalistic ideology. After earning her MFA from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill in 2007, Stacy Lynn Waddell has been recognized and exhibited nationally at institutions such as the Nasher Museum of Art, the Institute of Contemporary Art in Boston, and trust me, many, many others. Her work is included in several public and private collections, including, of course, the Harvey B. Gantt Center, the Gibbs Museum of Art, and the Studio Museum of Harlem. Waddell has most recently participated in State of the Art in 2020. It was an exhibition at Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art. She has upcoming exhibitions that include Graphic Pull, Contemporary Prints from the collection of the Nasher Museum of Art at Duke University, and Taking Space, Contemporary Women Artists and the Politics of Space at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. In 2022, Waddell will end the year as a Civitella Ranieri Fellow in Umbria, Italy, where she'll spend 6 weeks producing works and conducting research in a 15th century castle. For a full list of Stacy Lynn Waddell's work and exhibitions, please visit her website at, of course, stacylynnwaddell.com. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Stacy Lynn Waddell.
Hello, how you doing?
I am good. I'm good. Thank you for joining us. I know that these kinds of requests might be coming your way quite often these days. And with so much going on in the world, I really appreciate you taking time with us, however brief, to let us know what you have going on. And so I want to kind of give a little bit of background because I think there were one or two people on Instagram, like Jeff Whetstone, that was like, oh yeah, you're two of my favorite people, talking to one another. But I'd imagine that most people don't know that you and I have any like prior like history of knowing one another in the past or whatever. So it takes me back to 2014 when a mutual friend of ours, Damian Stamer, fantastic artist, invited me down to Durham, North Carolina, to visit with him and a few other artists. And it just so happens that you were there. You were part of the whole organization of that thing. And it was actually my first time hanging out in Durham and my first time meeting you. So how are you?
I'm good. It's been, wow, has it been 6 years?
It's been 6 years, more than 6 years now.
More than 6 years. Yeah, a lot has changed and much has stayed the same. But yeah, things are good. Durham's a good city. I mean, despite all the stuff going on outside of the Durham bubble and the bubble of my studio, the world's turned kind of upside down in that 6 years, and then right side up and then upside down again.
No, it's absolutely true. I mean, there's so many things one could say. Last night I was cleaning up, as one does when one is stuck at home all the time, like I am. And I came across a Time magazine where Obama was Person of the Year, and this was a 2012 Time magazine. And I felt like I was holding something that was like 25 years old. Felt like that was
those were the days.
such a long time ago. But it is what it is. We're a couple of weeks away from election, and life has been quite interesting. Is not really the word, but tell us. What has the past 6 months been like for Stacy Lynn Waddell? I mean, you've been navigating this pandemic, navigating making art, navigating life, just kind of in a very, very brief way. Can you tell us How have you been navigating your career as an artist and dealing with all of this?
Yeah, it's been an interesting kind of roller coaster. I think at first I wasn't thinking about art at all. Like most of us, I was trying to prepare, fill the coffers, figure out what's going on with my mom and my aunts and uncles, and where's the family, how's the family. That kept me pretty busy for the first couple of months. But then once I felt like I was getting the hang of it, then art became sort of the refuge, as it always is. Even in the most difficult times inside the studio, this space is a refuge. So what I did was I just sort of hunkered down at home. I brought some drawing materials home and made drawings at my kitchen table. And that turned out to be an opportunity for me to turn inward. And what I didn't know then that I know now, it was preparing me for some opportunities that thankfully I was able to receive during the pandemic. I think I learned a lot about sort of some things that I want to move forward on in terms of ideas. So outside of all of the nervousness and the fear and the uncertainty, it was a really good time for me to focus in ways that I didn't even know would be fruitful for me going forward. So some necessary quiet time, getting back to drawing, like literally like a stylus, a tool, and a sheet of paper, which I'd gotten away from a bit. And oddly enough, or thankfully, that has kind of set me on a path to kind of think a lot about drawing, which is kind of where all this starts for me in the studio. So it was a good time of kind of pulling me back and setting me on a path that I was on, but left some time back.
Yeah, I mean, you said a couple of things that I really want to kind of come back to. One of those things has to do with opportunities. I think that just through observation, from observing other artists and observing curators and just people that I know within the art world, I think to some degree, there have been a different set of opportunities emerging for artists in the midst of all of this. I mean, we probably don't have enough time to get into too many specifics, but I just kind of feel like despite the contraction in terms of like how many galleries had to either like close or, temporarily or permanently, and how many museums had to close temporarily and not quite sure what their future is. When I talk to artists, I often hear about things that kind of came their way in the midst of all of this. So there's still a lot happening. I guess that's what I'm getting at. Like, despite how weird and crazy things have been, I still see a lot of people. I think flourishing might even be the right word. Like, there's still a certain amount of growth there. And the other thing that you said that I'm interested in is this idea that, you hunkered down, you took some materials home, and, you got to your table, whether your living room, dining room, kitchen table, whatever it is, and you just kind of sat down and you started making work in a smaller space, smaller scale. How has that affected your art making? Because you said it led to some opportunities or prepared you for some opportunities.
Well, what it did was it brought me back to making in the most basic sense. I mean, I think a lot of what happens especially when you go to graduate school and pursue an MFA, it professionalizes you. And so I have a fairly generous studio space and these materials and making work for exhibitions and projects. And that's a different kind of making, right? It's a different making with a different kind of purpose. But when you're faced with a stack of paper and a tool and these ideas, right? You really have to sort of face down that kind of path that many artists sometimes find difficult to take, right? Sometimes find difficult to kind of make the beginning mark. And it was really good for me to just kind of like forget all the other materials, not think about deadlines or anything, because everything had been postponed or halted. So just draw. And I've had many teachers over the years that when you're in doubt, draw. You always have a pencil or a pen, some scrap sheet of paper. I mean, I had my fancy, beautiful drawing paper. You don't need that. I mean, the back of a receipt, right? you could just make some drawings. So that for me was really eye-opening. And it reminded me that we have everything that we need. We really, really do.
Right.
And so in that process, then, hey, can you do a Zoom conversation? Or, the art world began to kind of wake up again, but also wake up in certain areas by focusing on artists that they hadn't thought about before. By looking at Black artists, right? And not just Black artists that have already made a name for themselves, but looking at the whole of Black creative production and making some decisions about inclusivity. That's been interesting to see happen. But also it gave me a chance. I had conversations with arts professionals that I never would have been able to have. Just conversations, just Zoom chats that I never would have been able to have.
It's great you brought that up, because I think that if for any artists that are listening right now, and I'd imagine quite a few people listening would be artists, I think that the thing to take advantage of during this wild time that we're in is that I do believe there's a different level of accessibility, right? Not just because people are stuck at home. I mean, some people have in fact gone back to work, institutions are opening up with abbreviated hours, what have you. But still, I think that, people are a bit more, and I don't know if this is permanent, don't get me wrong, but I mean, it's just people are a bit more receptive to the stranger reaching out and saying, hey, can we have a chat on the phone or on Zoom about what I'm working on or about what I heard you're working on? And I think that for artists in this moment, they should realize that that opportunity is there for them. So you froze a bit. I'm not sure if I froze.
I lost you. Yeah, there you are.
But I think that that's just like a valuable lesson, and we'll get into that some more. So, so right now we're coming to, you're coming to us live from your studio. I see the Rock'em Sock'em robots on to the side.
Yeah, I have that there. Yeah.
Yeah, obviously I have to ask you about
out there as well. I have a little cousin who's just the light of my life, and he comes to visit me at the studio, and we spend all our time playing. I want him to let's look at art, let's talk about art. We might draw a little bit, but he really comes here to play Rock'em Sock'em Robots. Yeah. that's what we do. So it's in the background in case he's watching tonight. He can sort of it's kind of like a high five to him. So, yeah.
So let's talk about the art that you make. All right. I mean, we talked a bit about drawing just now, and since we're in your studio, certainly we want to kind of get a sneak peek at some of the things that you've either recently finished or working on, or whatever you feel comfortable showing. But, you are truly a multidisciplinary artist. I think that that's, safe to say. I mean, it's hard to even pin down exactly when someone says, well, what does she do? And I go, well, I explain to you, right? So how do you describe what you do? And maybe as you're giving that explanation, we can kind of tee this up and maybe get to see a couple of things in your space.
Sure. So yes, this is live. My computer is on a multi-tiered thing on a cart. So I'm getting ready to swivel for everybody who's watching out there. So here we are, we're gonna swivel. Just come with me.
That works.
Does the swivel work?
It works. Just before we got started, I spilled half a cup of water in my lap. So, it's Zoom time.
All right. Now, that light, did you see the reflection of my computer in there?
Actually, we can see this pretty well. I mean, we're not zoomed in on a lot of detail, but we certainly can see the overall framed image.
Okay. So I'm bringing you to this, and it's not a new image, but I wanted to show it, and I'm glad that you sort of naturally asked the question, how do you describe what kind of artist you are? I use just that generic term, mixed media, because it's the one that seems to make the most sense. I like materials and I like processes. So
right.
A lot of what I do sort of saddles up next to printmaking.
Right.
Things like collage in a certain way. I'm gilding things. I'm using acids to burn into paper. So a lot of the things that are very similar to what someone might do in a print shop are what I do here in the studio. But again, it starts with drawing. And this is a drawing from 2006.
Okay.
I made this while still in graduate school. And when I went to grad school, I didn't have, like many of my cohort, people came, they were photographers, they were painters. They had a specific way of working. I'd been a high school art teacher. I did not have a practice at all. I came so that I could teach on the college level. Little did I know I would be a working artist after that. But I wanted to try and find a way to make marks that also had held so much in the meaning in terms of the technique. The technique itself had a lot of meaning. And so I started burning paper using various tools, whether they be branding irons or other heated styluses, to make marks on paper. And this piece called Sparkle is from a long series of works that I made from looking at my mother's college annuals from the 60s. My mom went to Shaw University, historic Black college, and historically Black college in Raleigh, North Carolina. And in the 60s, these sort of queens, these right. college queens just really caught my attention as a kind of image of progress, an image of Black beauty. But because they were college queens, there were this kind of real images of beauty, progress, that kind of American ideal and dream. And one of the reasons we go to college, right? One of the reasons right. that those Black men and women who were able to go to these colleges and universities, they went to attain that thing. And so this sort of image from a photograph burned into paper, something that's kind of burned or etched. If you look really carefully, which I'm very sad that folks out there can't see, it looks like an etching, right? Okay. It's burnt, but the surface of this very irregular, thick, handmade paper is almost like leather. And this image that's drawn and then burned into that paper looks like an etching. In fact, there's so much relief. This could be a plate. I could ink this and probably get some kind of faint impression.
Right.
And so that's all of that, etching and inking and impressions and texture is everything to me, because paper for me is an organic surface, right? It's living, it's always changing. So leaving Sparkle. Now, this is going to be interesting. Again, we're on a cart. We're going to be looking at reflective work. Right, so here is another work. Can you read that text?
I believe, yes, Black Lives Matter, Bleak Matter Lives.
Yeah, it starts to come apart, right? The text is not discernible. So I work with text. I work with readable, legible text. And then I like to find those places where meaning breaks down. And so this is called Black Lives Matter, in parentheses, transformation. The text transforms, it changes. When this first was this exclamation, when people first started using it, there was a lot of and there still is a lot of sort of question as to, well, Black Lives Matter, what about other lives? There's all this sort of people having to justify why Black lives matter. Do Black lives in fact matter? Obviously they do. The breakdown of the text is just like a word jumble, the kind of cryptoquote, maybe puzzle, where you take Black Lives Matter and then you rearrange those same letters, right? And you get Bleak Matter, Live C, or Crack Save, Little BM. But all of it is a kind of jumble about jumbling and understanding, disorienting text that's readable, and we feel, because we understand the language, that we have an understanding, but there's always another way to see it, or a complete misunderstanding in terms of your point of origin, right? Your point of reference, your emotional or psychological connection, right, to Black lives at all.
It's funny. I never thought about this, but hearing you say this, and again, there's been plenty of discussions about like that whole like, Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter. That it's sort of like people who just can't digest this idea, this statement. But
Right.
it's quite funny because, and again, this is completely because it's almost 7:30 on a Tuesday in October, and I'm probably just a little bit Stacy right now. But we all remember that term like "save the whales," right?
Yeah.
I don't remember one person saying, well, what about the sharks? Well, what about the dolphins? Well, what about
No,
you
no.
know what I mean? Like it's just it is quite interesting,
Yeah.
right? But of course, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
saying that with a little bit of tongue in cheek. I mean, I know it's
Sure.
just like absurd.
Sure.
But it's just funny how
Yeah. Yeah.
people miss the point. Well, I just think that years will go by and there will still be people that miss the point of Black Lives Matter as a statement and
Absolutely.
And
the absurdity of that has to do with this sort of bleak matter alive sea or crack save little BM. It's just all absurd, right? What does that mean? It's like, what do you mean you don't understand why?
Well, they understand.
Yeah. What do you mean you don't understand that by saying that Black Lives Matter, no one's saying that other lives don't.
Right.
It's like it's crazy. It's like, why can't people just wear a mask?
Right. Well, listen, Stacy, we're at 7:23 now.
Let's go. We're moving. We're on the move. We're moving. Art on a cart. Art on a cart. Another text piece, maybe a la Mel Bachner, but this kind of language, blah, blah, which is to me this kind of absurdity. Like you hear things over and over, and it's just kind of like, like the Charlie Brown, the adults were always like, wah, wah. You never understood the language, but it's just the perfect sentiment for now. It's just blah, blah, blah. This kind of like golden placard. It's gold, right? If you could see these in the real, when you stand in front of these reflective things, your shadow is cast. You have to move your body relative to the work to take it all in. It's a physical experience standing in front of something that is reflective. Right? Again, loss of surface, warp and weft of paper. Now, the next piece I want to show you is a diptych. It's called Battle Royale. And so the first image is, and thanks to everyone out there going with us on this virtual Art on a Cart tour. This is called Battle Royale. It's 20 feet long, 2 panels. It's a diptych. And this first piece, can you make it out? Can you?
It's a very old pistol, yes.
19th century pistol, right? And the second one is just a standard issue Glock that any police officer would have. But the dueling nature, the positioning of these two pieces, for me, is about, that 19th century pistol is, you can think about, of course, Harriet Tubman, right? Who is fabled or known to have carried a pistol because people had to be, let's just say, inspired not to turn back, right? If you're trying to go to a better place, if you're fleeing slavery, she carried that pistol as a safety.
Yeah.
But also thinking about like 19th century versus today, like they're still facing off. Those ideas, right, are still facing off. We're still dealing with all the things relative to like guns, the Second Amendment, racism, what it means to have contentious ideas face one another, right? In the standoff, who's going to win?
Right?
Who's going to win? For us, for someone like myself, I see nobody winning, right, in this particular standoff. Because from either vantage point, the story kind of remains the same for people of color, for Black folks, right? The ideas, the ideals behind both of these then and now are very similar, right? And pose a question, right? The standoff is sort of like the question to the viewer. So what are you going to do, right? Who do you think's going to win this battle? And despite who wins, like for me, none of us wins. So then we're left to figure out, pick up the pieces from that and figure out how to move forward. So
Well, thanks for that. We had some questions come in the past few minutes, and what I think we
okay.
might want to do is maybe we go back to the original place where you were sitting, and then we can go through the questions that have come in. It's just a few, and then we could look at some more of your artwork.
Sure.
So the first question is, do you feel pressured or constrained to produce in the same way as your past work? Do you feel confined by your past work?
I don't feel confined by it. I actually, the older work I've been looking at a lot recently because I'm going to have a solo project next year in New York. And I found some gems. I found some ideas that I dropped, right? That I didn't continue, or things that I didn't run to their natural conclusion that I'd like to kind of jump back into. So for me, the older work has opened up other portals for me to go down. I don't really feel constrained to make work. I don't know if I've felt like I'm making work like I used to make work, because I've kind of gone back and forth. Like the materials and processes that I like to play with, I've used from the beginning. Again, I didn't really have a practice. So I've had the benefit of kind of playing with different things along the way. And so I like keeping it that way. It keeps it interesting for me. The gold leaf works are the thing that the work is sort of concretizing into, in terms of the longest running series of things, the longest running material that I've worked with. And so next year will be an opportunity for me to put out a statement in the form of a solo project, which I'm actually very much looking forward to. So ask me that like after next fall. I'll probably have some different answers for you about that. So
Right. And another question is postgraduate education necessary to be a successful artist?
Well, success is defined differently by different artists. For me, success is, being able to have exhibitions and projects in front of me to live off my work, which I've been able to do terribly and wonderfully, depending on what month, what year you ask me. And so it's been a privilege to do that. I think you have to, as the artist, define success. I don't think you need the MFA at all. And plenty of people do it with just a BFA. Some do it with no training at all. I do think though, for artists of color, that whatever credentialing that we can do, it gives you options. If you want to pick up some adjunct work to teach, you can. If you want to do some things in other institutions, if there is a way, kind of a dividing line, and the job has nothing to do with your artwork, then the degree certainly is a way to have more options.
And then last question in the series that came in, it's kind of a bit of a different question. As a participant in several different artist residencies, what's the importance of a residency, and how are the ones you've participated in helped you or been different from one another?
I've participated in really great residencies. The most recent one being the Joan Mitchell Center in New Orleans. I mean, it's a dream. I won a Joan Mitchell Painters and Sculptors Grant in 2010. And then when they opened the residency, thus far, it's only been open to be applied to by anyone that's won a Joan Mitchell Foundation grant of any kind. That place is a dream. First of all, it's New Orleans. I could live in New Orleans for 3 months. The studios are beautiful. The living arrangements are gorgeous. They provide your food and your meals, and There's a pool. It's New Orleans. I mean, it's just
Right.
I second lined and danced and ate and made art and just
Right.
amazing. But the residency is important because different residencies provide different things. Some provide you direct connection to art professionals by way of studio visits. We had studio visits. I was there during the opening of Prospect. And so Trevor Schoonmaker's Prospect, everyone comes down, the whole art world comes to the city, and the Joan Mitchell Center is a site for some artists that are in Prospect to stay. That's part of the opening weekend activities. So you have studio visits by all of these people coming through. I think that for me, the residency gives me a chance to meet other artists, to do some networking. But for me, the biggest thing is like a change of venue. Like that was incredibly helpful for me. It was like a jump start to live and work for 3 months in another place, in another city. I'm ashamed to say I'd never been to New Orleans prior to when I was there in 2017.
Don't be ashamed. Most people haven't.
Go if you can, once all of this is to be honest. But yeah, the artists that I got to meet Maren Hossinger.
Right.
Maren Hossinger is for those that don't know, go Google her immediately. But that was a pleasure. All of the artists were better. I mean, all of them. Everybody was amazing. Paula Wilson was there. Just tons of people. Roberto Jamora was there. I'm gonna miss some of you if some of you are watching this. I'm kind of flustered right now with names, but yeah, the residency is I think really super interesting and important.
Yeah, you touch on a good point. I mean, no self-promotion, but I recently launched a residency in Japan. And without getting into any crazy details about that, I bring it up because what you're saying about how being in a different place can change, I think it can change you chemically.
Oh yeah.
Right. And it's hard for someone to imagine that if they haven't experienced that. Right. Like it's like a funny thing to try to explain to someone what it's like to actually be changed chemically by being in a different place. And it makes you look at every aspect of your life in a somewhat different prism. And then it's like, and then I say, and then it's up to you what you do with that, right? Like you have that experience now. It's like, now what are you going to do with that new energy, with that new perspective, right?
Absolutely. Especially for me, I'm a studio artist, meaning I'm not one of these artists that does like public projects in different cities, and I'm not traveling a lot. So the residency adds the travel aspect on top of just going somewhere for the opening of a show that you're in. And that, you're right. I mean, on a chemical level, you're changed. You're eating different food, the air, the atmosphere is different. Everything is different. New Orleans is a global city. And so to go and be in a Fats Domino second line, I mean, the second lines, the music, the way that people use their bodies to express joy, to see Black joy on such a grand level every day. I mean, yeah, it was an amazing experience.
That's great. That's great. Well, why don't we do this? This is a good time to look at some of the images we've prepared of your work. And and again, let's figure out to make sure that we can get this as large as possible. What I'm seeing on my screen, I can see, but if there's any way, I'm talking to our technicians in the background there, if there's any way that we can enlarge that, I think it would be worth a shot. And if we can't, that's fine, but it's definitely worth a shot. Can we make that any bigger? So while they're figuring that out, why don't we talk about the work that's on screen right now? We Valuable Women Wanted a Black Revolution for MH 2017.
Yes. So for those that don't know, New Orleans was one of the first cities to take down the statuary from their Confederate monuments. And so when you go to the city, when you go to Lee Circle, for instance, you see this giant column, right, at Lee Circle, but there's no statuary. And I was very fascinated with that. I knew that prior to going to the city. So I visited all these sites and I saw all these pedestals, which I find really compelling. And I've been sort of floating it out to the universe that someone please invite me to do something with the pedestals. I'm on it. I've been thinking about this for a long time. And thinking about monuments, who gets to decide, the statuary, the figure that gets to project, right, that enduring energy out into the cosmos of that city, of that state, of that region. I started thinking about new ways to envision these pedestals. And of course, that intersected with my being in residence with Maren Hossinger, got to meet her, talk with her. And one day she was wearing her We Want a Revolution, Black Radical Women t-shirt of the fantastic Brooklyn Museum show. And I took a picture of her in front. We were on our way somewhere. And I thought, oh, there's the statuary. There's the figure. I mean, there's the figure, right? That's the figure.
Right.
And so I set out on this quest to create these monuments that I'd re-envisioned, starring Maren. That piece now is in the collection of the Brooklyn Museum, which I'm super proud about.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Let's
Yeah.
go on to the next work. Okay, so this one has a lot to say and it's pretty small, so please forgive us, folks, if you're having a hard time reading the detail. But is this also on your website?
Is that piece on the website? Yes, that piece is on my website.
So I would
say to try to look at it and see if you can discern any of the text at all.
I think it says women somewhere on there. Is that true?
There you go. Keep looking.
Well, listen, between my age, my eyes, and my screen, I'm not going any further. I'm gonna. Well, I'm sure it's the title of the work is probably what's on the work. Women are powerful and dangerous.
Right.
I would go out on a limb and say that.
Yes. So this is a piece, again, I like to work with text. I like to play with meaning. So present readable text in a way that forces you to have to navigate the surface of the work to read the text. Again, it's all about how language in some cases is inadequate, right? And how the decorative nature of the surfaces that I create can be a trap. They draw you, but then they are there to also confuse you, right? To kind of slow down your taking in of this. And so this is a famous Audre Lorde quote. For those that don't know who Audre Lorde is, please go now and look her up. You should know who she is. And it's just something that's always resonated with me, that you are powerful and dangerous. And I like thinking of myself maybe in some small way as being both powerful and dangerous. I think artists are powerful and dangerous because we have these weapons, right? We have these weapons that we very stealthily and not sometimes float out into the world. And art has a way of having power and creating powerful opportunities. So again, this variegated gold leaf, it's very antagonistic to light and shoot. You have to move your body. The paper has its own sort of like surface, it undulates, it does all these things, and you have to also read the text. In the process, you've had a physical relationship with a piece. It's not just this kind of frontal, static relationship, your body to that work. It's a giant floppy piece of paper pinned to the wall that's radiating and reflecting light. And that light is energy, right? That draws you and then also kind of like holds you in a slight web of confusion. So you have to set out to decode what it is your eye is seeing and your brain is trying to figure out.
Awesome. And I noticed that this color blue, that particular blue in this piece seems to come up quite often in your work. What's your relationship with that color?
Well, when I first started making these sort of burnt drawings, like the first piece that I showed you, Sparkle, if you look really closely, it's a kind of orange and sepias and earth tones. And I started thinking about just color theory, right? If you look on the color wheel, just across from orange is a range of blues. And so that provides a kind of vibrational
Mm,
sort of experience optically, but also that blue for water, for sky, for this kind of elemental, there's something grounding about blue and
mm,
that particular kind of blue that you relate to water or sky, or a kind of atmosphere, that again is part of the undergirding of information, that kind of that a scaffolding, right? That's beneath the work that you experience, that you
right.
have, that you understand and not, but it holds you. It holds you.
Let's go on to the next work so we don't run out of time so we can actually see everything. So I posted this piece on Instagram today because I just was like fell in love with it when I saw it. So
Um,
uh, so yeah, maybe you can share a bit of a background on this particular work.
yeah, these damaged emergency blankets, they're my papery, gilded, painted versions of the Mylar blankets that runners wear in emergency situations, sort of first responders use to give people emergency heat. And there's something, my grandmother made quilts. I have one of those quilts. There's something about a blanket or a quilt that is about protection, right? It's a safe place. And thinking about those made out of paper, right? These are just really giant drawings or, paintings, but it's my way, or sculptures, right? It's my way of taking paper and making sculpture, right? I get to play with those surfaces. When you take a sort of beginning sculpture class, or it used to be called sort of intro to 3D design, I'm aging myself by saying that, but to teach students about volume, right? You can present them a flat sheet of paper, and then all you need to do is fold it and open it back up. It starts to become volumetric, right? As we fold things, it starts to become volumetric. And so that's all I'm doing to this paper. I'm crinkling them. I've made several of these, folded them. I've done all kinds of sort of origami type things to the paper that weaken it, that damage it, and then I build it back up
Right.
with color, with gold, with silver. And then they can be reshaped. They can be folded like a textile. They can be pulled and opened and hung as, a rectilinear drawing or painting on a wall. They can be bundled and tacked to the wall in this way that you see in this image. So the way that they can shapeshift is super interesting to me. And it's just paper. It's paper. Yeah.
So let's go to the next work. So here the figure starts to emerge in your work in a way that was not in the prior works. And also, I noticed earlier you spoke quite a bit about your family. In different times you mentioned your family, and I'm quite curious to see where family fits into your thinking about your art making.
Well, I work a lot from photographs. I'm the official and not so official keeper of the family photographs. I have a lot of family albums and photographs that I keep. I have them in the acid-free boxes, and I'm very protective over them. It's just something about a photographic archive. It's a really precious thing to have. And I collect photographs. I collect them from everywhere. Vernacular images, images that have been discarded at secondhand shops and all places that I bring into the studio. And I have boxes and boxes of them that I just sort of keep. I feel that it's my job to reclaim these seemingly discarded images. And so the image that you see here is of me, my mother, and sister. It's interesting to think about the way that positioning and composition in a photographic studio, whether it's JCPenney's or if you went to Sears or wherever it is you go to take a photograph with a group, the photographer takes a great amount of time to organize and arrange. And so I've become very interested in looking at portraiture and the way in which people are organized and arranged. And I start looking at things like patterns and texture, the heights of different people. And so this is a 3 people in the space of a rectangle. Our lips are of 22 karat gold, the other is composition gold. But there's enough information there for you to get a sense of time period. You can see my mother in that cropped fro. Immediately signals 70s, right? The collar of my younger sister. If you could look closer, that kind of like bow, tied bow collar of the blouse that I'm wearing. I, say this and chuckle, but I modeled at a department store for a little bit. I was in a couple of fashion shows. That was my mother's idea. And so I feel like I remember this outfit that I'm wearing as being one of the things or close to something that I would model in those little department store fashion shows. Yeah. I never want you to mention that I said that again, ever.
Well, it's now saved for all time on this recording.
Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
You'll never be able to get away from that statement. But anyway.
But these are icon portraits.
Right.
I mean, to be specific, this is my medieval icon portrait of my family. This kind of spiritual, reverential, in a way, there's a lot of abstraction too, but I call these icon portraits.
Well, it's interesting to me because in many ways, it's the family portrait, particularly in the late 70s, and again, I maybe saying particularly in the late 70s is terribly inaccurate, but the family portrait, at least in the pre-digital phone age, is one of those sort of things that's quite similar, quite a similar experience across the country. With well, for the sake of this conversation, we'll say like Black families, right? Where you knew there was that, if you went to someone's house, you were going to see that photo with the 3 kids in this configuration. You were going to see the baby in some bassinet. Like there was this particular things that you could kind of expect to see. Everyone went to their Sears, as you mentioned, or their other local superstore or whatever at that time, and had that portrait made. But the portraits are also about like this sort of like aspirational image of family, as much like no matter how dysfunctional the family was, they still had that photo of them looking like they were just the perfect family.
That everything was okay.
So anyway, that's just really struck me. And the other thing is, when I see this work, which is obviously not a portrait, it's an artwork inspired by a portrait, it makes me think about how portraits used to be so important, like as a material object.
Still are, yeah.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, when I say used to be so important, I mean to like everyone. Like so, like now, there's some people that have never actually held a physical portrait in their hand. Like
it's actually on photo paper, like real photograph. Right.
Exactly, like a real photograph, not a photo on their phone, not a photo that just like a real photo.
Made with chemicals, right? Yeah.
Chemicals, right? Yeah. And so that materiality of what that object means, I think is kind of like has disappeared for a lot of people. And the other thing is the importance of photography can be seen when you go and you look at early photography. People often say, well, why was no one smiling in those early photographs? Well, one, I'm not teaching you anything you don't know. I'm not even attempting to, but I'm saying like, for one, it took a long time for the photo to actually be taken, right? So,
Yeah.
so you were like standing there for a long time. You couldn't move,
Yeah.
right? So you're not gonna have this silly smile on your face for like
Right.
a long time. And then the other thing was the photograph was like serious business. Like you were getting your photograph taken. Like
Oh, yeah.
that wasn't just like an everyday thing. You
Right.
had your photograph taken like 3 times in your life.
Right. Right. And it wasn't inexpensive, right?
Right,
It wasn't
right.
disposable. And it was a record. It was a document considered considered
Right,
a real record of the family,
right.
lineage, right? So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. And also a statement, right? Like you will put on the clothing that you wanted to say, you want to say something to the world,
Right.
right? For
Right.
all time. For all
Yeah.
time. Anyway, I digress. Let's jump to the next one.
Ah, another portrait. Portrait of progress. Yeah, there we are. It's this is an image of my Aunt Edwina, Gloria Edwina, her high school portrait, cap and gown, which we all recognize. Like knowing who she is less important than those kind of iconic shapes and objects that we understand. We know the cap and gown. We know that tassel, right? We know the shape of that cap and what that signifies. And no matter what race, what religion, what economic, stratosphere you come from, no, whatever the demographic, wherever you fall in that, you have an emotional relationship to this photograph, this
Indeed.
image. Right?
Indeed.
You understand with that, whether you're on your way there now, like you're aspiring towards that, or you reached that and gone beyond that and had that experience. And so yeah.
So that actually leads me. There's a question that was in the chat, and that is, do you teach on a college level now?
Every blue moon, really blue moon, I'll adjunct. But I don't have a teaching gig, so to speak.
Right, right.
But sometimes every blue moon.
So I think we have 2 more images, or was it 1? Let's see.
Ah, yes. Octavia Butler. This is up in a current show called Future Text in New York at the S.J. Weiler Fund. Sadly, like so much of what was planned as an opening and all of that, just obviously because of the pandemic, did not happen. But this show is about Afrofuturism. And you can't have a show
about
Afrofuturism without referencing the godmother of that. And that's Octavia Butler. I mean, what can we say? She is
right. Well, I think it's safe to say she's another one of those people that if you don't know her, you need to go. You need to.
Yeah, we're not. Yeah,
you need to go and I won't even say Google her. You need to go to Amazon and order some books.
Yeah,
so we're down to the final 5 minutes. So I know we had some questions already come in the chat. So certainly I just want to let it be known to anyone out there who does want to throw another question our way before we run out of time, that now would be a good time to do that. We certainly could keep going and talking, but I just wanted to kind of float that. And while we're waiting to see, I mean, maybe those were the questions. So you mentioned you have a show coming up next year in New York. Maybe you can't talk too much about that, but here's a question. What are you looking forward to? Just in general, in life.
I'm looking forward to November 4th.
I know that's right.
I'm looking forward to November 4th or 5th, 6th, or 7th. I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to seeing where a lot of these thoughts and ideas that I'm really trying to grow into something, where they're going to go. I'm giving myself a lot of rope, maybe to hang myself with. I don't know. I don't know. But I'm working on this solo project a lot differently than I tend to work on other works.
Mhm,
Because
mhm.
it's the first time that I'll have in this kind of space, the gallery space, a chance to, like I said, make a complete statement
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
have that sort of received through that lens, obviously, of the commercial,
Right.
but in the space of New York. So
Right.
I'm really, really super excited about that.
Well,
And
that's awesome. That's
seeing what happens. But prior to that, I am working on a project at the Mint Museum called Silent Streets. And I'm creating an installation of flags. That's
wow.
all I'll say.
Very
Flags.
cool. Well,
Yeah.
we will definitely check that out. I want to
Yeah.
thank you for your time
Thank you.
today. As I
Yeah.
mentioned, I knew the hour would fly by, and look at
Bye
that.
bye.
It has
Yeah.
it has flown. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna stay on here. I'm gonna wish you a good night, and I'm definitely gonna stay in touch with you. Check out what you have going on and what you got coming up. And just thank you again so much, Stacy. Enjoy your evening.
You very much. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. And I'm
Uh,
gonna apply to your residency.
you should. You should. All right. Well, Stacy's going to sign off, but I'm going to stay on. I just want to remind everyone that open air studio visits and conversations will be going on every month. We'll be announcing next month's open air artist fairly soon. So stay tuned. Make sure you're following the Harvey Gantt Center on Instagram and other social media. And, you should also support the Gantt Center. There are many ways to do so. There'll be information on the screen shortly that will give you some details on how to text to give, but also go to the Gantt Center's website and become a supporter so that we can continue doing these kinds of programs. You can donate unmasked by typing unmask and texting it to 345-345, text to give. So I encourage you to do that. Stay in touch with us and check in with us next month. We look forward to seeing you. Thank you.